Hello and welcome to Caught in the Crossfire, a new show where we're going to be taking some CS topics, throwing them out there, and establishing a little bit of a crossfire on them. I'm Darth Mike, we got Alan Hender, and we got our very first special guest. He's the vocal mercenary, play-by-play journeyman caster, Adam Dinko Hawthorne.
Yeah, I thought that was a great intro, Mike. I like it. The mercenary. I think that probably does sum up my career this last year. Having worked with I worked with Pimp last week, so I really am racking up all the color commentators.
I have a skit idea to pitch you.
Yes, tell him about this. It's good.
I'm not gonna. I don't want to share it on the broadcast too much, but I want to. I want to film this skit with you at some point for an event. I'll tell you after we're done recording.
Okay, that sounds good.
But yeah,
wait.
You have gotten around. You have gotten around.
I really have.
Some of us try and find a partner. Some of us just slum it around.
The esports commentator slut, I think we'll go with too. That's probably pretty okay.
Town bike of casting. But
okay, yeah, sure.
Let's get to the topics here. So this is a new show that we're doing. If you see the graphics, they are placeholder graphics that I made last night. So they're definitely super duper official. We'll probably be replacing a lot of things as time goes on. But the idea of this show is to have debates and arguments and get into it a little bit and get messy and see who's got strong takes and who's got really stupid takes. And we're going to find out every week with new guests brought on or however frequently we wind up doing this. We'll see. It's all a little bit up in the air for now, but we should be having a good time with it. So let's dive into things. Let's get into things. Our first topic here, well, we've got a lot of new rosters coming down the pipeline. A lot of teams have just made changes. And there's been a lot of debate about whether teams are right to make changes or whether maybe people are jumping the gun a little bit too soon. Let's talk about one of the first changes here. It's not a change they chose to make. It's ENCE. ENCE had their star player Spinx snatched away by Vitality. And so instead of just replacing one player, they decided to do a bit of a rebuild, getting rid of Hades, their AWPer, as well, bringing in SunPayus, the dynamic Spaniard, and also bringing in valde, who's been on the bench for a little while, to come in and round out the team. Now, the question I posit for you is this new team actually going to be better than the old? You wouldn't expect it when your star player gets poached, but it's looking kind of spicy. Dinko, how you feeling about ENCE?
I feel like they've probably been the team that did the best business over the off season, right? They're a team that, well, an organization that have a bit of money, but they don't have like a crazy amount where they're able to immediately guarantee themselves a spot at every partner league, etc. So to stay competitive is incredible for ENCE. I thought it was kind of the end of the road when that whole Finnish project died, and I seen the team they put together. I wasn't quite sure how that was going to work. I think they struck gold with the team, bringing in Spinx, bringing in DH, etc. That all working out really was incredible. I think now moving forward, they've done very, very well after removing Spinx. But I don't know if it's going to make the team as good as what we've seen with the ENCE before. I think there was even more you could go with as you look at the players, how young they were. I think Hades was a bit of a question mark. Was he going to be consistent at any point in his career? And I think that's what Snappy said towards the end of the run was, he is actually, the reason we got rid of him is because sometimes he's amazing, sometimes he's a bit quiet. It was just based on his consistency. So I think this new version is going to be worse than the previous version. Long term, maybe a little better, but short term, absolutely, I think it's going to be worse because I think SunPayus hasn't really seen him outside of this Movistar team, outside of a Spanish team. I don't know how good he is in terms of communicating in English. Seems like all of his social medias are generally in Spanish as well. How is he going to fare in an environment where not everyone's of the same? I think when you look at that Movistar team, actually, they were very, very familial. I felt like they were all together a lot. They were just doing everything together. Whereas now on this end side, you're going into an international roster. You got a different culture about it. Everybody is from a different country. You don't live there. You don't share the same heritage, culture, etc. So I think that's going to be a little different outside the servers for SunPayus. I think inside the server as well, he's quite a systematic player. He's a player that doesn't really take over the server per se like you would a crazy player like Dexter, for example. This is someone that slotting into an international team, I think is going to take a long time. For valde, I don't think he's been the player people expect him to be for a long time, right? The first OG wasn't great. Towards the end of the tenure, wasn't even really a standout player there with some of the youngsters coming in. I don't think valde's been at his best for a very long time, and he's getting older now too. So the longevity of valde, I don't even see being that great. So I feel like this team isn't going to be as good as it could be immediately. And I don't even, maybe long term is SunPayus clicks, but I feel like this team isn't going to be as good as the previous roster.
All right, I'll take the other side, Mike. I'm quite confident this team is going to be better than the previous team. I think the first thing to say is there's no doubt this is very shrewd kind of GMing from ENCE, because when you lose Spinx, who's not a very orthodox player, he doesn't play normal spots. That's why Vitality wanted him, because he can lurk on T-side and still put up ridiculous numbers. They understood that when you lose a player like that and you just slot in that player from that sort of position in the next team down the rung, you're not going to be as good. So they looked at their lineup, they said, Hades, maybe too inconsistent, maybe doesn't have the play style we want. We're going to look around, we're going to shop around. We're going to take SunPayus, who maybe still has some growth yet to do, but the way he ended last season was absolutely ridiculous. Valencia, definitely the MVP of that tournament. Maybe a kind of sparring of Alex when you throw in in-game leader roles, but Cologne was just stupid. The amount of games where he's taking on top 5 teams and just blowing them out of the water. Now, I don't think he's going to consistently be on that level, but if there's any indicator of potential where he could be very soon in a proper system, I think SunPayus has kind of already proved enough on that front. And I think when you look at Valde as a player, immediately when you lose Spinx, as I was saying, he's not your typical star player who just plays all the rotator spots, who always goes in first on T side with all the nades. He fills in some more difficult roles, plays the edge of the map a lot on T side. And Valde for me is a very, very shrewd signing, because he can play a lot of different positions. He has played a lot of different positions. We know he's a vocal player. We know he's great at communicating. He has an amazing mind for the game. And if you guys have ever actually spoken to him, he really knows his stuff about Counter-Strike. So I do think Valde coming in is a very clever kind of replacement. So when I look at losing Spinx and Hades, when you group them together, SunPayus and Valde in, it's on par, or for me, it's probably better when you throw in a player like Valde, who I think when you look at the Old ENCE, you look at the players on the team, you say, Snappy's the vocal player here. Surely he's calling a lot of the shots. Surely he's having a lot of influence on the game. But who beyond that has the experience, because they had to take players from, lesser known teams or regions that weren't as developed. So I think having Valde is really powerful as kind of a secondary voice, and that could really boost the team. And with all these aspects together, I do think it might take a bit of time. Roles might take a little bit to figure out. But when you've got so many versatile players, when you've got great communicators like Valde, as long as SunPayus' English isn't completely abysmal, I really do think this team is going to work. And I'd say in 3 months, maybe just about by the major, this team will, eye test, be better than ENCE, even if in the world ranking, some of the Vitalities, the GTs of the world have got it together. I do think this team, when we actually watch them play, will look better than the ENCE we saw in the last 6 months. There you go.
I've got a couple things to poke you guys on.
Hit me.
First, I will say for SunPayus, I'm actually really not worried about the language. At least in interviews, he's been really comfortable and fluent in English. So I'm guessing his English is at least very good, if not, near fluent. So I'm not really concerned about the language. But what I am concerned about is something you guys keep bringing up as a problem with Hades, which is consistency. What has been the hallmark of SunPayus' career is a lack of consistency. When he's on, he's always looked incredible. And yes, this last 3-month period, starting with Valencia, running into Cologne, not even 3 months, 2 months, a month, was amazing.
3 weeks.
They elevated for sure. But we've seen them elevate before, and we've seen them bottom out. Is that a Movistar problem, or is that a SunPayus problem? I don't know, but we will find out in this new ENCE, I suppose. And then also the question is with Valde, that I'm going to pose to you, Dinko. Was it that Valde wasn't good, or was it that OG hasn't been good? And I don't think many players have been able to truly shine within that OG roster. So let's start. We'll start with Dinko on that response. Challenges raised by Alan here. You got some rebuttals?
Yeah, I mean, when was Valde last good? It was like 2018, right? He hasn't done anything since 2018. So, that's 4 years now where Valde was good for a while. Hasn't really done much. That OG team, okay, we could talk about it being pretty bad. Let's look at a major part of that. That's Valde. He's probably one of the biggest names within that team, so you would expect him to do heavy lifting for the OG team. So if you say, oh, people can't shine in OG, then you got to look to a big name player in the team that's taking up a lot of space. That'll be Valde. You're playing with a good IGL of Alexi B as well. Didn't do anything with him. You've got a legendary player of MBK at the start of the roster. You got some young players. I'd say Mantu was pretty good at the start, but I think he was bang average for most of that roster as well. So fair enough. He hasn't had a great AWPer in the team. And I think given where we are in CS right now, you need to have like a really powerful AWPer. But Valde himself didn't really do the best work in that OG team. You look at the stuff he was doing in his stats, you weren't huge either. You can always look into the stats a little bit, but Valde, I feel like he was another cook in the kitchen early on, and was maybe a bit of a problem with the start of OG because you had too much of a voice when you had MBK, you had Alexi B and Valde at the same time. So that's a bit of an issue. I just wonder how Valde is going to work with Snappy, because if you completely submit yourself to Snappy and just let him call, then that's fine. But I feel like Snappy's style only works if everyone is fully on board, fully bought into the system that ENCE are running and have been running for the last year. So if you end up going with and trying to correct some of the stuff Snappy's doing, having a bit more say in the team, that for me is a problem. I think Snappy needs to be like supreme leader in this team a little bit, and just have everyone bought into the ideology of how to play. And I don't know if Valde is 100% going to be on that, but I think the one positive going for him is that I think he probably realizes this is one of his last opportunities to actually do something, right? Because if he doesn't perform in this ENCE team, does anybody want to pick up Valde at that point? He's 27 years old. He's missed out on the Astralis. He's missed out on all those opportunities. So I feel like he's done nothing in OG for like 4 years. He has to do something now with ENCE.
I like the image of Snappy as a dom here. Submit yourself to Snappy.
I can see it.
It's kind of a
The
little
baby
weird.
face 30-year-old dom. I like it.
Do you think he has like whips that are shaped like the Kraken tentacles for ENCE? I think that's got to be what
All right,
he's
so
going
we got
on.
an ENCE sex dungeon going on. I like that, Mike. This is
It makes sense to me in my head. It makes sense to me.
Yeah,
They're
all
really
right, man.
working on team chemistry there. Alan, you got any points, or should we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I would just say quickly on the Valde one. I mean, OG was pretty much a disaster from start to finish. And I certainly agree that when they made that original team, it was basically Alexi, Valde, and MBK coming together and trying to brute force their way back into the top level after not having a brilliant stint, of course, getting removed from their teams or such. And yeah, I mean, it certainly did look like it spilt over, lots of kind of head banging cooks in the kitchens problem, but maybe this is an opportunity for Valde just to join a system that's already extremely functional. And Snappy, proven he can call at a top level. Saw as well, I'm sure, has a much bigger influence on this team than a lot of people realize. So there might be issues, but I don't think it's very likely when he's coming into an outfit that kind of already exists. And yeah, I do think Saw as well
already
can
exist though, because you've removed your star player and you removed an AWPer, two of the most important pieces of the team. So does that system really exist? I don't think so. Not anymore.
I think for teams, the vast majority stems from the in-game leader and coach combination. Certainly, you're right that I don't know. They might throw a lot of the roles out the window, but I suspect they'll plug and play Valde pretty heavily into Spinx's spot. So for that reason,
you think Valde's going to be better in Spinx in his spots then?
No, I don't. But
this is the thing that I feel like we haven't touched on enough so far. It's just how damn good Spinx has been, right?
Yeah.
Spinx is so good.
So let me get this right, Alan. So you got a team, ENCE coming in. You were saying this new ENCE is going to be better. You've also just said that Valde is going to slot into Spinx's role. Therefore, do you think Valde is going to be better than Spinx in those roles then, if this team is going to be better?
Not necessarily as an individual. I think the team will probably be better strategically because I think they'll be better at defaulting because Valde is just that much more experienced.
But if he's playing Spinx's roles, how are they going to be? How are they going to be better?
Because SunPayus is better than Hades, and I think the overall team is better.
SunPayus is going to be that much better than Hades that you remove the best player of the last team, and it's still going to make them better.
I don't think there's going to be a lot in it, but I just feel like Hades was a problem. Relatively, not he was never a bad player, but if we're looking towards, they were top 5 ends, but in terms of winning a big international tournament, I don't think you're necessarily going to do that with Hades. But SunPayus, you might be able to if he's actually hitting his top level. So Valde will not put up the same numbers as Spinx reasonably confidently. I just think the overall team looks a little better to me than it did with Spinx. Because you've got to remember, Spinx, he's not a super experienced player. Sure, he got the numbers. Sure, his stats are amazing. But in terms of what he adds to the team on an overall level, it maybe isn't as much when you forget about raw individual stuff as Valde can with his experience. So he will be worse mechanically. He probably will have worse numbers, but I could see the team play being elevated enough to kind of counteract that.
There is also always the point with the counter Spinx, which is that without Spinx, they played with Snacks. They still did great at Dallas, right? I mean, that was
but they didn't really. Snacks didn't really play Spinx's roles though. Snacks just did whatever the hell he wanted when he stood in for them. He was even playing like D-House spots on Nuke and stuff, and you're just not going to do that more consistently. And there's a reason they didn't really go with Snacks in the end, right?
All right. Well, I think we've got some good points for both sides. I'm not actually sure where I land on this one. Obviously, it's hard to see a team minus a star player actually.
Pick a side, Mike. Pick a side.
I believe. I love Spinx so much. I do think that this team might struggle. I think so much it rides on SunPayus. Do we get SunPayus of the tail end of the season?
I don't think SunPayus is an AWPer you can just fully rely on to take
That's
over
what they're
your
hoping
team.
for.
Yeah, I just don't think he's that kind of AWPer. He's not. I think people were comparing him to Device, right? Device isn't going to be like a super hard carry AWP, never was, right? So you're looking at this team. You need another real star player, and if you're looking at valde slotting him for Spinx, I don't think he's going to do that to the level you want him to. So yeah, I just don't think SunPayus is going to be good enough to carry the whole team here. I think you got to see someone else step up. If they are going to be better, it's got to be the likes of Diha, Madden stepping up rather than valde.
Diha would be my pick on that one, but we will, I think, move on here. Excellent points done so far. Let's go on to our next topic here. Keeping with roster changes, Astralis didn't make any roster changes. They've kept it pretty consistent after their last. There was some discussion about that, right? Obviously, the Copenhagen Flames players were available. There was a lot of movement going on within the Danish scene. A lot of players shifted rosters. Astralis have not necessarily performed. They've recently been getting knocked out of every RMR qualifier. Did Astralis really miss their window on this one?
I think it's hard because on one hand, yeah, you look at Astralis, they've always missed out on the new Danish talent because I think they're stuck with the roster they've got. But I look at the team and who would you want to change in the team? I think the main people would be Zipex, people calling for. And Zipex really started to step up towards the end of the season, right? He deserves this spot in terms of the last performances at the previous events. He wasn't even really a whole. I think when Astralis were kind of really bad, when they first made the Farley move around Pro League and when Lucky was in the team, Zip was really bad. He was a real liability, especially on CT side. There was just too many holes where he was, but he really did step it up towards the end of the season. You know, you look at Pinnacle Cup performances, you look at Cologne, he was pretty good. I thought Zip looked okay. The player for me, the strange one is actually Config, man. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't, like, would you change Config? No, because of the ceiling he's got, but he's just incredibly inconsistent. He got like 8 kills against Los Quitos or whatever it was a couple of days ago in the RMR. I mean, Config goes missing, and then the next map, he's an absolute monster. And his confidence seems to be just up and down, up and down, up and down. You know, he'll say at the start of a tournament, oh, we're back, we're ready this time. Next map goes like 8 and 20 or something. You know, this isn't you. When you have a player that isn't a star AWPer of Farley, he's just not going to be with the space, how they set him up. He or his ability, I don't think we've seen the peak of his ability yet, but the way Astralis play him, he doesn't get the numbers. So you really have Blamef and Config. Blamef's far too passive on the T side to be impactful. So you have to rely on Config so much. And if Config is inconsistent, then your T side suck. And that's what's happened for Astralis. So I feel like I need a better AWPer for this team. That's a change I would make. And if you're just waiting with the rumbles of Device, if you're Astralis, you don't make the move yet. Instead of just sort of removing Farley for no reason, bringing in someone and just place holding till Device gets there. I think you wait till Device is ready and you pick him up and you go again with Device. Then the team have a player who is dynamic, who will be able to be involved in opening fights a little bit more and can pull clutches back and find impact wherever needed. Whereas Farley's just kind of sitting around waiting for impact to come his way instead of really having the balls to go out there and get it too often. So I feel like Astralis don't have enough going for them on the T side, and Config is a big part of that. And I would change Farley, but right now you wouldn't change Config. Who you're going to get other than Config, right? And you're waiting for Device. So I think I would like to see changes, but at the time, I think it's smart just to wait until you can get Device. And that would just be my move for Astralis right now.
Waiting for Device. It's the new play. Sweeping theaters.
I think half the scene
an
is doing
existential struggle for the Danish CS scene. Alan, how are you feeling about Astralis? They mess up.
Yeah, it's unfortunately for the show, I kind of fully agree with Dinko.
Oh no!
On most angles. I would say when you factor in the wider scene, when you know that a team like Flames came out of contract after the major, maybe you could have got Roy for config. Maybe it wouldn't have been the biggest risk in the world. Maybe even Nikodos for Farlig. Maybe that would have been an option as well. Valde, we know, has been on the market. And again, we've seen it so many times with Astralis, but there were a lot of players that could have been picked up by them, and they didn't make a move. They stuck with it. Of course, they look pretty good at Cologne, I guess, but I think we're all in agreement here that that's probably the outlier, and we're not going to expect them to be consistently top four in these massive international tournaments. So that's kind of my take on Astralis is, irrespective of where you think the problem is, irrespective of who you think should get removed, there were just too many options on the table and they didn't commit anywhere. They just stayed where they are. And, it's that old adage of, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting anything to be different. And for that reason, yes, Mike, I'm saying Astralis are insane for not at least considering options for other players.
He's talked himself into it. I want to talk about one of the lightning rods for criticism, I feel. His numbers are stupid good, but we haven't mentioned him yet. But eye test-wise, he's one of the most frustrating players to watch at times. I'm talking about Blame F, of course. The man's got big numbers, but a lot of those numbers come in situations where he's saving, where he's out, where the round is done. What's going on with Blame F? Why is he beyond reproach so far within this debate? I'll throw this up for Alan first.
I think his stats are just too good, aren't they? If he was worse individually and still playing the same way, he would get ridiculed by the community, and especially those like diehard Astralis fans from the 2018, 2019 days. They would drag him through the mud, and maybe they have at times, but he's just too good individually to deny. And even if, you look at, when we talk about his style, we say, he plays for the late round. He does bait if you watch him pretty closely, but it's kind of by design, and everyone knows on the team that he's going to go in later and whatever, someone else is going to make the space. So yeah, I mean, that's why he's beyond reproach, is because he's just puts up too many numbers. And for that reason, I just can't see you getting rid of Blame F. He's just too good right now as an individual. And I don't know. I mean, the whole team just feels like a bit of a mess, and they just having a massive identity crisis. And we've seen with the roles over the last 6 months, every interview with Glaive is like, the roles, guys, it's not working. We need to try something new. And how long are we going to play this out before something breaks and something has to change?
Yeah. Dinko, are you a bait F defender?
Yeah, I think Blame F is fantastic. I think he's the best in the world at what he does. And I think really anybody comes close to what Blame F is capable of doing in his play style. He's the best CT player in the world with a rifle. You're looking at Blame F CT numbers, they're ridiculous. And he's able to find so much impact for Astralis on the CT side, which is why they look so good there. But the problem with Blame F is he's very poor, I think, at playing outside of his own play style. He's very unable to adapt, unable to fit the role that's needed, fit the gap that's in the team. And I think that adaptability is what will hinder teams with Blame F in it. And you'll see that with the likes of Complexity that had too many passive players, and they brought in Cold Zera, etc. That was a bloody, I don't know why the hell they did that, but that was a disaster, that whole team. There's always a role problem, a role conversation when you look at the Blame F teams. And that's because he is incapable of playing any role other than what he is good at. And I think you shouldn't make him play any other role than what he is good at. Just build around him, figure out what pieces, what weaknesses you do have, what pitfalls you do have around Blame F, and try and fill those. Now, it seems like the package of config in Blame F on paper looks absolutely perfect, right? Because one fixes the weaknesses of the other, right? You have the passive beast of Blame F, and then to counter some of that passive ability, you've got the likes of Config, who's just a berserker, right? But the problem is Config just isn't hitting the numbers enough. And when you look at Astralis, when they're playing well, it is Config that is having a good game with Blame F, and you kind of need both of them to fire off for that package to work. And then outside of that, Glaive hasn't been great individually. He used to be pretty solid playing within that system, but the roles for Astralis were absolutely perfect when he was on top of that team. The AWPer of Pro League doesn't get enough impact. So I think you're looking around and you're criticizing BlameF because you want him to make up for the pitfalls of his teammates when he's doing absolutely everything he can and everybody else is underperforming, which really puts a spotlight on BlameF's weakness to adapt. And I don't think he should have to adapt. I think you just have to put criticism on the players that aren't doing their role to the best of their ability. At the end of the day, you've got BlameF in the team to play a certain role, and that's what he's doing to the best of his ability. He's just not doing more than that. He's not doing the overtime and going in and changing up his role and adapting and changing elements of his game, and you need more out of the other players. And I think it's ridiculous that people are calling for BlameF to be cut to fix this Astralis team. That would be absolutely mental.
Well, this actually perfectly segues into what my next point wants to be on this one. Criticizing other players who aren't working within their role. Glaive, man. Yeah, look, I know he's the legendary in-game leader. Yes, Astralis won everything. Yes, that buys you a lot of time beyond reproach. But you've got another in-game leader sitting there who we just talked about why you're not going to touch him. He's not in-game leading. You could make a move somewhere else and get rid of Glaive and try and bring in some more firepower. Why would that make sense? What do you think, Dinko?
I just think, you've got such a good IGL there. Like, who else are you going to get in this world?
Just leave BlameF.
It's got... You liked BlameF's calling and complexity. I didn't. I don't think many people did. I think Glaive's a better caller than BlameF, and I think Glaive is a better caller than pretty much everybody outside of the top performing IGLs at the moment, like Carrigan, obviously. I think, you look at Vitality, they've got a calling issue too. So I don't know what option you've got outside of Glaive. Obviously, the fact that he's not fragging as well, that kind of sucks. But looking at the teams that, you've got, like G2 just went for the mantra of picking up a very low fragging IGL, and they're still making it work at the moment. We'll see how long term that works out. But who else are you going to get? You've lost Hookseed. You've lost that opportunity. Snappy's an ENCE. He's not going to be leaving that project unless, you hit him with a big offer or whatever. But you replacing Glaive is a very hard thing to do. And I think Astralis are in a really tough spot because if you do want to change that, who do you get? I don't think there is anybody right now that makes sense to replace Glaive with. And BlameF going into the calling position. He does call a Mirage, but that actually has worked pretty well since he took over the calling. But, BlameF calling the rest of the game just isn't going to work. Complexity was a bit of a disaster in that respect. And yeah, I don't think you replace Glaive. I don't think you do that. If you want more fragging output, change the AWPer. Maybe change Zip. I think, Zip, you're getting enough out of him right now, but you're not getting anything exceptional. And then you can maybe look at even Config down the line. If Config doesn't fix the inconsistency, you got to get rid of him. As much as a good player that he is, eventually you would have to get rid of him because he's too much of a liability at times. Even though he is the reason they win some maps, he's also the reason they lose a lot of them.
All right, you heard Dinko, cut config. Let's get it trending. Hashtag Dinko says cut config. I think we're about ready to move on from this one. Alan, you got any last points before we slide on down the range?
I mean, I'm on that boat, actually. The more we talk about it, the more it's like,
the more you want
give
to
Glaive
config.
his spots back on CT side, either put config into like anchor spots and see if he can hack it, or just get rid of him. And, you could have got a Valde, you could have got a Roy to play any of these roles. So, Astralis, you missed the boat, and I'm looking forward to 4 more months of mediocre performances.
Until Device works his way out of his NIP contract.
Yes.
Got it. All right, let's move on here. Next topic, let's talk about it. Last roster change topic here before we get into the upcoming Pro League. But Imperial made a swap minus FNX. They didn't win the major, so FNX major win doesn't work anymore.
Magic's gone.
Get rid of FNX. The magic is broken. The spell is broken. And the fact that this was just a retirement glory project appears to be broken. He's apparently their coach now, which is an interesting choice. And they've brought in Chelo. So here's my question. Is this still just a last dance retirement project, or is Imperial a real contender now? Are they a real team who we should start to take a bit more seriously? Who wants to dive on this one?
I'll take it. I mean, I'll frame it from this angle, Mike. If this project is going to work, I think this is the lineup. I think it makes a lot of sense. I like the roles. Vinny was playing a lot of like rotator spots and middle of the map roles with the FNX lineup because Bolts and FNX going to take all the bad roles. But now Vinny should be back to where he was in Furia, those sort of spots. Got Chelo, loves playing the middle of the map. He just played loads of those spots on MIBR because he was in-game leader and he always play the middle. So roles look good. Chelo's a massive individual upgrade over FNX. FNX was, his legacy can't be touched, but here and now, FNX is not a brilliant top level individual player.
You
so
say he was shit. Just say it.
He was pretty bad. He was pretty bad, especially in those last few tournaments. So massive individual upgrade.
Fan base in Alan's eyes right now.
They love me. But yeah, they massive individual upgrade. Roles look good. I'm not saying this team is going to work, but if there's a chance, if there's any hope that this could really be a top 10, maybe borderline top 5 team, this is the lineup. And for that reason alone, I am quite excited to see how this actually develops over the next few months.
Yeah, I mean, Imperial to me, I think it feels like a weird team because it feels like half of the team want to be competitive and really think they are going to be a team striving to win trophies and get deep in tournaments. And then the other half, I think, whether it be the organization or the older players, kind of feel like it's a great marketing tool or something along those lines. Now, I think you bring in Chelo and upgrade FNX, right? As Alan said, that's an obvious choice. Chelo is hungry. He's still young. He's 24 years old. He's a fantastic player, individually speaking. You've seen the hunger he had in the MIBR team, how hyped he was, how emotionally important he was to that team. He's made the right move in terms of, okay, you're coming over to this team, you look at the players around, you've got the experience. If everybody is actually really wanting to push this project forward, that would make sense for Chelo. But then I see a move like making FNX the coach of the team. And I just wonder, how is this how are we on the same path? Like make a roster move to bring Chelo in to upgrade a player, and then we just make FNX the coach. It's just cannibalizing the move completely. It's just so ridiculous. You should have kept Peacemaker. That makes so much more sense. But it feels like FNX is just going to be standing there looking pretty and modeling all of the sponsors, because that really, I feel like he is not going to be a player that comes in and is going to give it his all as the coach of the team. I think FNX absolutely could do a good job at the coaching role based on his experience as a player. Absolute legend of the Brazilian scene. Obviously, a very, very good mind for the game. Has been around, still remain competitive. Even after going many years out, coming back and still being able to put up okay numbers is still impressive. But I don't see FNX being very, very invested in this role. I do not see FNX caring that much about this and really putting his all into becoming the coach of this team. This just feels like FNX has to be part of the brand because of the size of his brand, personal brand, and what FNX brings to the team. It's not really a last dance if you don't have FNX. You look at the last dance and it's got Fallen and Fur. That's it. So you got to keep at least one player on board within the ranks, I guess. And if the coach spot has to be it, I think that's the only sense I can find for it. I don't see FNX being a real coach. So yeah, this team is I don't see them winning anything. I don't even know if they'll go deep in Rio. But they'll get through the RMR. I think they'll make it to the major, but I don't think they're going to do a whole lot.
Not a real contender for you just yet.
Not yet.
I do think part of me does feel like they literally just put FNX in the coaching role so they could keep the FNX major memes alive. It feels
it's kind of dead already, Mike. He didn't win another major. So that's kind of dead.
Yeah, but it's an aberration. It's
as dead as the Devil Walk Major 1 Simple 0,
Well, now Devil Walk Major Analyst 1 Simple 0 Major Analyst.
Yeah, that's true. He does have that on him.
Devil Walk still got the leg up right now. Look, here's the thing, though. I think this team overperformed the last time we saw them in the major, right? I think that this team absolutely still has juice. It's always been a question of motivation. I think there's still firepower. Fur has blown me away with the way he's looked in this roster, because before he joined this roster, he was awful. He was playing like NA Advanced and getting destroyed. And then he came back into this roster and was Fur again. And Chelo is a monster. Chelo is an absolute monster. He was the whole focal point for that MIBR roster. Even when he was calling around himself, he was still the focal point for that MIBR roster. I think him just as an individual can absolutely just shred face and create space for the others. And I think that his aggression elsewhere on the map is going to blend with Fur very nicely, especially on T sides, where you got two guys to contend with who like to push the envelope, who like to get in your face, who like to take those fights, who can maybe play together. For Chelo and MIBR, it was Chelo and Jota playing together. Now maybe it's going to be Fur and Chelo, and I think that's a pretty deadly combo. So I've got some excitement for this. I've got some hype for this roster. I kind of think this Imperial team, I don't know about winning a major, but I think they could make it past the first round of a major.
Yeah, certainly. I think the biggest question is still Fallen. I mean, I've watched quite a lot of Imperial actually over the last 2 or 3 days, and when I watch them play, they just don't look like a very good team. They make a lot of mistakes. They would, if they had to play EU Tier 2, they would get brutalized by some teams most people have never heard of. They would lose games just because their team play isn't great. CT setups just fall in half because they're making mistakes, which is just so bizarre. And I guess this goes back to your point, Dinko, of they've got so much experience in this team. They know how to play Counter-Strike. There's no doubt about it. But when they just play some of these games, it just looks awful. They're making such basic errors for the quality of players and what they know. So that, for me, is the big question is Fallen enough to fix all of these issues? You've essentially got no coach. I mean, FNX is, I think he's already announced as a streamer as well. So,
yeah,
I mean, come on, man.
You can't be a content creator
exactly.
and coach at the same time.
Yeah,
it's not the same role.
It's just ridiculous.
Victories. Victories are content.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree with you as well there, Alan, Fallen being a talking point. But, I think it's the fact that I don't really think this team are involved in the current meta of Counter-Strike. I think they're still stuck in their own world where they were used to be good, right? And it hasn't updated. And you look at when they were playing well at the major, you look at some of their strats, in particular on Mirage, they were basically doing what Na'Vi do, right? They were just like, all right, what's the best team in the world doing? Let's take a look at that. And instead of taking elements of it, they just did the strat exactly the same on the T side. So I think, Fallen in particular, he even said when he went to Liquid and was meant to be the IGL there and that whole Stewie thing happened, he said that, he was still behind the meta. He had to learn the new meta of Counter-Strike and try and understand how it's being played currently. I don't know if they've done that yet, and I don't think there's anybody. I actually, Chelo is the player that could change that. He could bring a lot of fresh ideas, so that could be a positive. But are they going to listen to Chelo?
That's the question.
Chelo seems like he has enough personality to command respect, but that's yet to be seen.
He has just had the bit brain dump, so we'll see if he can bring some of those elements on in. But I think we are going to move on to our last topic here. We'll see what Imperial can do. Glory project, back to the old days, or vanity project that's not actually going to have much behind it. We're going to have to find out. We're going to have to leave it to the audience to decide, I guess. Here's our last question. ESL Pro League's coming up, right? This new season of Pro League, a ton of these new rosters, a ton of these changes. This is the first, long-term big event where they can start to make their mark. So we've got the phases. We've got the Navis. I don't want to know about the phases or the Navis. I want to know, outside of that, who do you think is a real contender, a real dark horse, a real team that can win the whole dang thing? Dinko, you got one for us?
Yeah, Cloud9. I think they're a team. Yeah, I've got it's studio, right? There's no crowd, right? There's no crowd. It's a studio environment. We've all kind of discussed the length how now studio environment. Well, there's still a crowd towards the playoffs, I suppose, for this, but it's not going to be like anything crazy. It's going to feel like a little DreamHack Open, I would assume. But we're looking at this Cloud9 team. We discussed at length how studio lands feel like online now, and it's not as much pressure there. Look at the teams they've got to play against in the opening matches, right? Yeah, their most difficult one, I'd say, is probably Liquid. Then you've got EG, Eternal Fire, Movistar Riders, and Furia. Furia didn't look so great towards the end of the season. Movistar Riders have just lost SunPayus. Eternal Fire haven't looked great on LAN at all. And Evil Geniuses, well, we're seeing them play a little better at Blast at the moment, but they're still a team that Cloud9 should be taking every day of the week. So you look at the group stage setups for them. I think it's an easy path for Cloud9. I think it's a great confidence builder that will let them forget about their Cologne run for where they lost to Astralis and Liquid. And I think, you're coming into this event, I think Cloud9, if you're looking outside of FaZe Na'Vi, this is a team that could definitely take it. This is a team that can definitely cause a few threats. And I think people will start to see this Cloud9 team play a little better, hopefully at Pro League after a poor Cologne, because they did look good in Dallas, right? They looked great in Dallas. Obviously, FaZe had a bit of a exhaustion there, and the field was much weaker out there in Dallas, but I thought that could have been the turning point for Cloud9. Hopefully they can bounce back coming into Pro League. But if you want my honest answer as to who I think is going to win this, I don't even think it's going to be that close. I think FaZe should win this Pro League. I think Na'Vi they look obviously good, but they're not a team that's feeling exactly comfortable. They're not stable right now. So I think FaZe don't really have a competitor at the moment. But I think Cloud9 is the most stable team out there outside of those top two for me.
Man's going for Cloud9. Alan, who you got?
I was going to take Cloud9, but it would be boring, Mike, if I just picked the same. It'd be very boring. Alan. Very boring. So I'm going to take...
We let the guest go first, because it's your problem now, Alan.
I'm going to take... I'm going to take NIP.
Okay.
Which is
all right,
probably a bit of a shocker.
Can we cut this bit and restart?
They did just drop a map to EG. Are you sure you want to say that?
Wait, let me see. Overpass. Now let's just commit. Let's just commit to it. NIP. So I like most of this NIP team. Okay. I liked the Brolan move a lot when they picked him up because NIP had this big issue of you just had too many essential role players, too many players that were going to be mediocre. So you get Brolan, a huge signing, really helps them, and now you've actually got Rez and Brolan playing at a pretty decent level. Hampus plays a lot of star player roles and has good numbers for an in-game leader. And I do think with DGL, they've improved a lot strategically, even from when they had Device last year. They look a lot better strategically to me. They make a lot of good decisions. Now, S-Tag AWPing, to not shoot myself in the foot, let's not dive too much into that topic, but I think he's serviceable. And with the right bracket, with a couple upsets in other places, I do think NIP have a real shot of going deep. And maybe, just maybe, Mike, if all the stars align, maybe they could actually win it.
I have a world in which NIP don't even make it out of Group A.
I don't think they do, actually.
Yeah, I think they will, but you look at Group A. It's Na'Vi, NIP, Vitality, Fnatic, Spirit, and then the mighty Endpoint. So you're looking at that, Alan. Do you see a world in which NIP, they could lose to both Fnatic and Spirit and not make it through the top 3? And then I feel like that's a very difficult group for NIP, to be honest.
I think all the groups are tough. I think
I'd say Group D is pretty easy.
When you got EG in there, it does help. It does help having the NA representation in there. But yeah, I mean, a big angle is a lot of teams are just off roster moves. Fnatic haven't made NIP haven't made a change. They haven't got to rework that whole system. So take that angle initially, and Spirit, Fnatic, and Vitality, they could have real issues. We don't know how deep their map pool is right now, and especially for, of course, Fnatic and Spirit. I haven't really seen them at all. So I think from that angle, you could probably expect some good stability. Na'Vi might be a tall order, but again, SDY, that situation isn't fully flushed out. Simple hasn't played yet as of recording yet in Blast. So we yet to see how that situation pans out. Is Simple even in great form? So maybe they don't top the group, but I do think given the format, given the number of games, they'll on average be good enough to make it out of that group. And hopefully, for my sake, Mike, get a good placing so they can get some good matchups in the playoffs.
I don't know about that one. That does feel like a bold choice. I'm going to make another bold choice here. I don't think it's a bold choice to make it out of groups, but I do think it's a bold choice to win the whole dang thing. I think it's time for Liquid again. I think it's Liquid time. Is this my NA heart running red, white, and blue over here? Maybe. But here's my point. Liquid with Yekindar looked revitalized, right? They looked like a team that we actually hope that they're going to be. And they didn't have any time with him really before that, right? That was just flying by the seat of the pants, full honeymoon. But one of the things that the Liquid players talked about is the ideas that Yekindar was bringing in, the elements of the outsiders that he previously played with, that he was bringing into the team, and how it was really enriching the rest of the squad as well. Now they've got some time with him. Now they've been playing with him. It looks like they're going to be playing with him for the foreseeable future, though I don't think that's confirmed just yet. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
I think it's a ticking NA time bomb, that team.
Okay.
I feel like right now you bring your Kindor in, they're all hyped. Oh, we're learning something new. This is incredible. And then at a certain point, the old attitudes of Liquid will kick in again, and that will just, drain even that of your Kindor. So I don't know. I feel like that team will be okay for a while. I think OC is really good. I think your Kindor is fantastic. Alige is still great. I think you've got a great point in terms of they absolutely should make it out of Group D. But I feel like that team doesn't really have much longevity for me. I don't know. I think the Yekindar move, a lot of people are excited about it. I think it's because you're kind of at least building up another NA team. But for me, I would have liked to have seen Yekindar go to a better team. I would have liked to have seen him be an elite force in an elite side and really hit his max potential. So that's a bit disappointing. But I think the team I have least heard about with the roster move is Heroic, man. I think that Yabi move is pretty sick. I think they could be a pretty cool dark horse as well.
Is that a dark horse, though, or is that a team that's expected to contend?
I think with the results they had towards the end of the year, they kind of lost contender status for me. But I think coming back into the start of the season with Yabi, I think they could easily get back there.
All right. It's true. I mean, throw in as well the studio environment, that's always helped Heroic. So that could be an angle where maybe they'll make it further, and they just announced that at least the playoffs are in front of a crowd. So maybe they'll storm groups and get out. But yeah, Heroic's another one that just sort of really bounced around on that kind of 5th to 8th best in the world spot. And Gabby's a good player. I don't think he's an enormous upgrade over Refresh, to be honest. And the Exist coaching angle has always been a bit bizarre to me in the first place. So Heroic definitely could place top 4, but I just think that their ceiling is maybe a little bit too low to actually win it.
The classic Heroic problem. Hit top 4, go no further. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see which one of these dark horses. You in the comments, if you want to let us know who you're betting on as your dark horse to make it through, let us know. Tell us that. Tell us why we're idiots for the ones that we did pick. I think this is just about going to wrap up our show, our first ever Caught in the Crossfire. So thank you so much for coming on as a guest, Dinko. And if you don't follow Dinko for whatever reason, you can see his @ right down below his face. Follow him on Twitter. Is there anything else people could do to support you, Dinko? You streaming these days?
Send me lots of money, I guess.
Yeah,
if you want to do that,
skins.
that's always support for. So to do that. But yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it. It was a great concept, and I hope Alan doesn't live to regret his NIP pick.
Alan's a full NIP fanboy now, much to the chagrin of everyone watching them in green rooms everywhere. But if you enjoyed this format, please do let us know. We're going to be trying to do more of these. This is a new series that Alan and I are getting up off the ground, so this should be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to do more. Thank you for checking it out. We'll see you on the next Caught in the Crossfire.